Yeah, good evening to you too. Yeah, how many wake-up calls do they need? I mean, this is the second time that Trump is in the White House, and it's the same. It's the same message that's sent to them. They should put their big boy pants and depend on themselves. Spend more money on defense. It's a big continent. They're rich. They have a huge economy. They have a lot of money, but they decide to do what? They decide not to spend enough to count on the United States. The reason there is NATO, U.S. doesn't need NATO. The U.S. is perfectly able to defend itself. NATO is there as a link between the U.S. and its European allies. But for years, they don't spend enough money. And during the election, they start lecturing the U.S. and joining the Democrats and attacking Trump and saying he's a threat to democracy. Now that he won, J.D. Vance returned the favor. He went there and told them what they don't want to hear. Your friend doesn't tell you what you like to hear. Your friend tells you what you need to hear. And the Europeans have to deal with it, that elections have consequences. We have Trump that won the election. And they have a lot of problems that they need to change. I mean, but, we should focus on also on the positive. The positive is that they have realized now that they need to spend more on defense. For the longest time, they were resisting and pushing back and ignoring, actually, the U.S. Request to increase. And it's by the agreement. They have committed to spend at least 2% of their own. Mm-hmm. And the second thing, for the longest time, they were thinking of China as just an economic issue, while the U.S. considered China a national security issue. Now the Europeans have moved into this American view of viewing China. So I think it's a mixed bag. I don't think it's a bad situation. I think the relationship with the European is important. It's very important. The European market is very important for American goods and services. The U.S. sells a ton of products there. It's not just a deficit in trade.
But the European officials have responded with outrage, calling the speech frightening. Now, how will this affect NATO's cohesion moving forward?
I think they're being dramatic, overly dramatic. I mean, they've said nasty things about Trump. They've said awful things about Trump. And when they changed their tune after he won, I mean, I think they're overreacting. Vance is not the president. He's the vice president. Basically, he is the plan B in case something happens to the president. So he's not the decision maker. He's not the policy maker.
But he is. But he is the Trump administration spokesperson at this conference, right?
Yes, he is there to represent the U.S. Yes, and he told them what they don't want to hear. Actually, they were criticizing the U.S. as to speech. They were criticizing as to populism. But they have a populist movement too in Europe, and they're clamping down on populist speech in the name of democracy and democratic values and hate. Basically, they were murdering democratic party practices also in Europe against the right-wing, the conservative movements. And he told them what they need to hear about the border, about immigration, about the First Amendment. That's what the U.S. does. The U.S. does that with the Middle East. They go and lecture the Middle East, and they tell Russia and China and all that. Why not tell the Europeans for the difference? I mean, the Europeans are now hearing what the rest of the world hears. I mean, the U.S. lectures other people about human rights. Now they're lecturing Europe about human rights.
Yes, Dr. Ihsan, but don't you think from your point of view that those speeches or those issues that he brought up to the surface are mere intervention in European domestic affairs?
Yes, but the U.S. intervenes in other people's business too when they criticize human rights in any country. That's intervention. And the Europeans also intervene in other people's business by talking about human rights and involving themselves. So now what goes around comes around. If it's a principle of non-intervention, then nobody should be talking about the business of nobody else. They shouldn't have been talking about American politics. They shouldn't have been talking about the Trump phenomenon, but they did. Therefore, why can't they accept it? I mean, they should be open-minded. You should be open to criticism. Listen to what the other side says and say, you know what, I disagree with you. And we don't see eye to eye, which is fine. They don't have to be drama queens about it. I mean, they're acting as if the sky is falling. The sky is not falling. Europeans are more able to have generous welfare programs because they spend less on defense. The U.S. spends more on defense, but the U.S. doesn't need, it's not threatened. They have the Russia problem in their backyard. They had Bosnia. They had the slaughter of Muslims in Bosnia. They couldn't intervene. They have a repeat of the final solution with the Muslims. Until Clinton intervened, they couldn't end the slaughter. It's a shame for the Europeans. Europeans are an economic superpower, but they're not pulling their weight military. Even they lecture the human rights on the Palestine, but they're not pressuring the Israelis with their economic power. Use your economic power to pressure the Israelis. You're a big partner of Israel. If you really believe in human rights and international law, why don't you pressure Israel? Now they don't want to arrest Netanyahu, even though they promoted the ICC. The ICC, the International Criminal Court, is a European invention. They invented it. But it seems like they want to keep it there to just use it as a tool against less developed countries. I mean, that's not good. I mean, so it's important that when you have people being blunt and saying things that the audience doesn't want to hear, I think it becomes more interesting to watch what's going on.
But when we speak about this very particular issue about the Middle East, they are on the same wavelength. And the United States, and Europe, it's not that they differ so much in their point of view, but we're speaking about other areas where we are speaking here about, he spoke about the freedom of speech laws in Germany and Sweden. He spoke about the Russo-Ukraine war. He spoke about, as you said, respectively, increasing the budget on the defense aspect. He spoke about different issues. He even spoke about very, very mere laws inside Europe. So this is drama queen?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, they should be open to hearing the other side. I mean, their allies are friends. Your friend tells you what you need to hear, not what you like to hear. And they have different background. I mean, it's a result of a populist election. The right-wing conservative election won. Trump won on this agenda, populist agenda. They have a populist movement in Europe, and they suppress the speech in the name of hate speech. So they need to hear. I mean, the side that they're suppressing in Europe has won the election in the U.S. Of course, they're going to hear from them.
Isn't the U.S. doing the same? Aren't we speaking about both sides maintaining same policy?
As to what? What policy as to what?
As per many issues, particularly of what our concerns is at least the Middle East.
I mean, they agree on certain things, disagree on certain other things. For example, with the suggestion, Trump, it's not a plan, it's not a strategy, it's not a program. The idea of Gaza, what Trump said, the program, or what Rubio called an offer on the table. The Europeans were clear. France, Germany, they were very adamant. They're saying no, not voluntary, involuntary, it doesn't matter. The Palestinians have to stay in Gaza, and Gaza has to be rebuilt, which is awesome, which is really good, actually, as a matter of international law and human rights. But there are deep problems with the Europeans because they have gotten used to getting away with things. For example, they discriminate in trade against U.S. Agricultural products because, for example, France wants to protect its agricultural industry. I think they make the U.S. pay higher tariffs than the U.S. makes them pay.
Weren't these retaliatory measures?
I mean, no, he said reciprocity, which is you treat me the way I treat you the way you treat me. Reciprocity. So that's what Trump said. Trump is trying to negotiate. See, I've been living in this country for 30 years now. And then they say all these issues that Trump brings up have been talked about years and decades, actually. NATO doesn't, the European allies don't spend enough money. European allies don't spend enough money.